Seamless transition.
That's right. Hey, Nikki.
Hey, it's so wonderful to have you back. You're the one and only mentor or speaker or guest host, whatever you'd like to name it, that I wanted to see again after only like when was it 3 weeks ago when we had the first tour. I said like, all right, now you're done with your book. I'm psyched to have another session with you. Although most of the people in the room haven't been there in the first session, so you have to kind of wrap it all up again. And
yeah.
Really looking forward to this. Maybe a short tour. I feel like it's something that's for the people on the other end, so for the participants, for you guys, the toughest thing to give a 1 minute introduction over and over. But it's always, I feel like you can never practice that enough. To how to make a 1 minute introduction. It's really exciting, and until the very last time you're giving it, you're passionate about it. It's basically you. It's not you in an envelope because you're there, but let's see, who we're talking to. And I would like to start with Marion. I'm unmuted you. Not. You're still muted. Maybe
now it should work. So hi everybody. Hope you're great.
Okay.
My name is Marion. I'm the owner of a small advertising agency in Austria and focusing on positioning and branding, especially for startups or out-of-the-box projects for corporates.
Nice. Caro.
Hello, my name is Caro. I'm Chilean Italian. I'm a journalist by profession, but I have been in the tech industry since I'm like 21, very young. And I'm currently running a consultancy firm, which we help tech companies land to Latin America, enter the Latin American market. I also own a media podcast production company in the region.
Nice. Martin. Martin, can you hear us? Are you still there?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I didn't catch my name. I'm Martin from Austria, and I'm involved in the area of innovation. We organized the Innovation Congress in Villach, and since the last 2 years, in a project called Seaboard, where we have regularly events for startups, investors, and something like this.
And Martin was actually with us in the first group as well. I don't know if you made it to the session with Sini. Marcus.
Yeah, hi, I'm Marcus. I'm from Germany. I'm a management partner of Mercury International, and we are helping companies to grow, which means grow via sales. So we are working with salespeople, sometimes with marketing people, to help them to grow their business and increase their sales at the end. And I joined actually a on-site tour 2 years ago. And now I do the virtual tour. So yeah, looking forward to our next steps here in our next discussion.
Florian.
I'm Florian Brody, based in Silicon Valley. I work as a transformational life leadership coach with executives and professionals worldwide. And I've been collaborating with Nikki for many, many years, and I always enjoy your event, Nikki's. And I also work with startups interested in coming to the Silicon Valley.
So nice to have you here. Jeffrey. Jeffrey's back.
Hi, I'm back. I'm Jeffrey. I'm from Chicago. I live in Prague. I do photography, 360-degree photography and product design. Currently starting a new company, building a 360-degree camera for mapping, surveying, and infrastructure inspection.
And last but not least, Evelyn.
Hey, I'm Eveline. I'm based in Vienna as well. I'm working at the Austrian Academy of Sciences. I'm a scientist. I'm the founder and coordinator of Exploration Space, which is a space for innovation and applying new methods to digital humanities and innovating the humanities. And I'm the founder and director of Ars Electronica Research Institute Knowledge for Humanity. This is a research institute where we are aiming to bridge the gap between academic knowledge on the one hand and applications and meaningful knowledge transfer on the other. So I'm mainly working on the intersection of science, society, art, and technology.
So now you know who you're talking to, and I'm passing the virtual stage over to you. Sini.
Thank you. Yeah, this is, I don't like these introductions. It makes me nervous. You know, there are a lot of great people in here. And so now I have to like actually be careful about what I'm saying.
Exactly, deliver.
Anyhow, awesome meeting you all. Yeah, awesome meeting you all. I met Florian before. I'm super happy to see you on the call, Florian. I live in Oakland, California, which is just outside of San Francisco. I've been in Silicon Valley for the past 7 years, but I grew up in Austria as well. I came here 7 years ago to do my MBA at UC Berkeley after spending a few years working on electric cars for BMW. I came here 2013 to do my MBA for 2 years and had an amazing time here, and I just couldn't go back to Europe. There was this one thing that just kept me here, and on a high level, I can only describe it as the people. On a more nuanced level, I would say it's the mindset of change and foresight that I haven't seen anywhere else than here in such a concentrated form. And so 2015, I then started working for a startup as their manager for product marketing. The startup is called Lucid Motors. I think a year and a half ago, they got about $1 billion in funding to produce an electric car. So they're doing pretty well right now. And then in 2017, I joined Apple to work for them as a program manager for new product introductions. So I spent 2.5 years helping them bring out the newest generation of Mac products. I had nothing to do with the bad keyboards. I just want to put that out there. But we did have obviously some keyboard issues that are getting fixed. I think in the most recent releases that I still followed, but wasn't working on anymore. I think those issues have been fixed. So end of last year, I decided to actually leave Apple and to work on a very different problem. I wanted to become an author and help young kids, so Gen Z, meaning up to 23 years old, to realize what kind of world they're getting themselves into. And I think the world that they are growing up in is significantly different than anything we've experienced before. The average age at which kids get smartphones is 10 years. And so from the age of 10, they're being influenced by all these algorithms that we're putting out there, all the content that we're putting out there. And the way we've so far been able as a society to constrict access to addictive materials like, let's say, alcohol or drugs has been law. We put law in place to say you can only drink at this age. You can only drive with 1 glass of beer in you. We were able to put laws behind it. And with tech, the best tool that we have as parents is to tell our kids, you only have an hour of internet usage. The problem is it takes me 10 seconds to get anything done on the internet. So an hour is not actually helpful in any way. Putting a time limitation on the internet doesn't help kids, doesn't help us contain kids to sites that we would like them to use. So before I go into this whole topic that I actually want to talk about today, which is privacy and exploitative algorithms in tech, I wanted to give you guys an actual tour of my workspace, of the space that I was actually working in at Apple. And I'm going to share my screen here. Let's see. All right, can you see my screen? Yep. Great. Let's see. All right. So the new Apple headquarters is in Cupertino. It's a $5 billion building that looks like a spaceship. It's this like round thing. And this here is where the buses drop me off every day for the past 2 years. And I hope this video runs decently smoothly. Zoom is always bad on my processor, but while this loads, you can see that this huge building is full of solar roofs, meaning the entire thing. Oh, I'm actually going to allow this to preload for a bit. can you believe that I had the worst internet for the past week that I ever had in my entire life in the middle of Silicon Valley? I am unable to fix it, and it's constantly messing up my Zoom calls. So here we are. All right. So the entire building is actually covered with solar cells so that it generates its own energy. In the middle of it is this beautiful park that is full of different fruit trees. So a lot of the fruits that people consume in this building are actually grown inside of it. There is a huge stage in the middle, this like rainbow stage where artists like Lady Gaga come to perform typically once a quarter. And my space was actually down here. This is where I was sitting on the first floor. The whole thing, as an employee, you have access to the whole thing, at least the inner ring of the whole thing, meaning there are hardly any walls or doors that you have to pass at all. The air is circulating in the whole building, which made COVID a disaster for Apple, because we have around 11,000 people working out of this building, all touching the same doors and breathing the same air. So Apple was actually one of the first companies in Silicon Valley to shut down. And they're also planning to reopen within the next 2 weeks. So I'm very curious how that will turn out. Yeah, working out of this building has just been like a tremendous pleasure. All of the desks were super ergonomically designed. Our buses that bring us there have Wi-Fi, and people are basically just sleeping in them all the time because they're more comfortable than people's beds. It's just been amazing to experience like the future of a workspace. The only critique that I had, and I think it hit us really hard during COVID, is that 11,000 people are touching the few doors that we have. Like access to the bathroom, it's 11,000 hands gripping those handles. And I've always wondered, if we had a virus outbreak like the flu or COVID right now, what would 11,000 people breathing the same air, touching the same door handles do in a building like this? And it seems like the answer from Apple was, let's shut it down. We can't actually keep it up. So I'm very curious what they will do next. I'm actually assuming they will install automatic doors to get over that issue. All right. Now let me talk about why the Valley and why people here are so fascinating to me. And the best example that I can give is related to COVID. So in January 20, it was the first time that we kind of heard about COVID as a general public. And I followed really closely what my friends' reactions to it were, because a lot of them are startup founders and they have this like quick changing mindset and foresight. A couple of my friends immediately, within 1 week, moved to Taiwan. Taiwan shut down their borders on February 7th to the general public, and they were already in Taiwan end of January. So there is this unbelievable understanding that small things can change the world immediately, and people here are just so willing to adjust to it. Other friends of mine have immediately given up their San Francisco apartments, moved out in nature somewhere. The only requirement was having good enough internet. I myself moved out of San Francisco to Oakland, where I'm close to a park here and close to nature as well. So there is this immediate adaptation to new information that I just haven't seen anywhere else in the world. And I think that is the core driver of what makes Silicon Valley so unique. It's that the people in there take a piece of information and change their entire lives around it. The friends of mine who live now in Taiwan have been there since end of January. They started learning Mandarin, and one of them is decently fluid already within like 3 months of learning, which is super, super impressive. They also assume that the kind of world order is going to change after this, because countries like China and Taiwan are able to regulate the issues much more effectively than an individualistic country like the US is. So they are actually betting on getting their future investors to come out of China. And so having Mandarin as a basis actually helps them with getting investments in the future. So it's really fascinating what these type of people think in terms of getting a tiny bit of information that for most of us in January was just like, oh yeah, this is a little virus like the flu, and it's not going to be a big deal. And for the US, it wasn't until like March where we actually started reacting. And within of the US, it showed again that California was the first to shut down. Silicon Valley, especially, people have been self-quarantining before the shutdown. I was in a self-quarantine 2 weeks before we were officially forced to do so. So there is just this big desire to change and the big foresight. And most people that I spoke to from here are actually loving this time because they no longer have to go to meetings. They no longer have to move physical places. All they do is execute on their projects, learn new things, read books, which then leads me to the one thing that I decided to do. I decided to, put out a 60-day challenge to actually write a book in 60 days. And the book is something that I would love to talk to you guys about and share some insights that I made in these 60 days. So basically the way I structured this whole thing was every night I would post a video of myself talking about my progress on the book and sharing like insights and tips with my friends. And it was 5 days ago that these like 60 days finished. And so I have a first draft of my book. I wrote 120,000 words, 55,000 of which ended up being in the book. And the book is mainly focused on the topic of privacy. It's the number one topic that I think about. And I think in Silicon Valley, it's also something that is kind of looming in the background as the thing that we're doing wrong. And before I talk in more detail about it, I want to say that I want to define some terms that I'm using because these terms are being thrown out there by me, assuming that everybody sees them in the same way. So one is when I say the Bay or the Valley or San Francisco, I'm always referring to the same kind of 4.5 million people that live around here. It's all the same thing for me. When I talk about privacy, I'm talking about information privacy mostly, not necessarily privacy broadly speaking as the right to be alone, the right to be free without interference or intrusion. I'm talking about information privacy, which is the right to have some control over our personal information and how it is being collected. And also I want to put out the disclaimer, everything that I'm saying comes from my own research, comes from this 60-day challenge. I'm not speaking for a company. I'm not part of Apple anymore, which is probably also an advantage because I can talk about them without only having to say nice things about them. In terms of privacy, so Silicon Valley has a really mixed response on it. And I think we've seen it since 2017 where Mark Zuckerberg had to show up in front of Congress to talk about privacy and how Facebook sees the issue. The way that I see Apple and Facebook is basically two opposite sides on this issue. Once 2016 hit and we had an election where private data was sold by Facebook to companies that were taking advantage of that in order to propagate certain candidates with real or fake news and fake media in order to, or better said, targeting people based on their Facebook usage. So to give you some more background, the way Facebook decides what kind of information it shows to you is based on kind of a voodoo doll that it created in the background of who you are. So every time you click something on Facebook, every time you post something on Facebook, every time you visit or search for information on Google, cookies are being saved on your laptop, which Facebook uses to feed into this voodoo doll. And that voodoo doll it's basically Sini's virtual version. So I know a lot of us are often thinking that like Facebook listens to a microphone because a day after we start talking about something, it proposes for us to buy that thing from some website. But it doesn't actually have to do that, because it is so good at creating this virtual version of ourselves that it is able to predict what we want better than we are ourselves in a lot of cases. So I actually think this voodoo doll knows who I am better than I could ever describe it myself. And because they have this voodoo doll, if they sell that voodoo doll to companies, they can target us not based on our conscious needs and desires, but based on our subconscious ones, which leads to us clicking on things not because we want to, but because we can't other than to, if that makes sense. So we're clicking on things that we don't actually want to see, but we kind of have to see. And from a personal experience, over the past 60 days, I spent hours watching ping pong videos. And this is crazy. I don't play ping pong, but I am a tennis player and I'm fascinated by racket sports. And so YouTube recognized that if they recommend interesting ping pong videos to me, I would be watching it. And so now I'm subscribed to this channel of this guy who has the craziest spin that I've never seen in my life before. And I'm watching his videos all the time, not because I want to, but because I can't other than click on that interesting dude. So Facebook stands on one side, as I said, where they're very willing to sell our data. I think for Facebook, we are actually not their customer. We are their product. The customer is advertising agencies who pay them a lot of money to get that data. I am feeling more like I'm a product in a supply chain where I'm getting churned through a production facility, and I'm being cost optimized and I'm being made sure to give back the most value, but I'm not necessarily being spoken to. And that shows up to me every time I go on Facebook, because quite frankly, the site itself is very useless. I have a hard time searching for friends. I have a hard time searching for events. Things are very badly organized, but it kind of makes sense for it to be badly organized, because the worse organized it is, the more time I will be spending on it. And that's in the end what they want. This is an attention economy where our biggest offering to these companies is no longer money, it's our time and attention spent. It's the information we give them freely every single day. So we're no longer paying for Facebook with money, or have never paid for it with money, but we are paying with our information, we're paying with our attention, and that is worth more than any money we could actually pay them, at least to advertisers and companies who can take advantage of that. So it's no longer just information that these ad companies are getting. Beyond information, they're actually getting our attention. And that's what allows them to sell products to us. On the other side, we have Apple. And Apple has announced, sorry, my roommates are going crazy. Apple has announced that they want to be the golden standard in Silicon Valley in terms of privacy. And I think it was really, really easy for us to back then announce that, because our business model does not rely on selling information or knowing a lot about our users. It does require Apple to sell extremely good hardware that is the basis for all these apps. We all use iPhones or use some kind of smartphone to enter the internet and all the apps in it. But it doesn't require Apple to necessarily sell our data to somebody to make money. It makes money from hardware sales and the software packages that it sells through the hardware. So Apple had a really easy time saying, okay, we will stand on the other side of this issue and we will really take care of people's privacy. And it shows up in the way they've executed software recently with, I don't know if you've ever used the Apple sign-in button instead of like a Google or Facebook sign-in button. But the Apple sign-in button creates a unique email address for every sign-in that you use, instead of Apple and Facebook instead of Google and Facebook that use your email and share that with whatever site you sign up on. Apple only shares a unique email that they specifically created for that one site that you are signing up on, so that you can, in your list of email addresses, you can just delete one of the email addresses and you will never get spam again from that site. So they're really interested in protecting your privacy. That being said, if Apple's business model was ever to go south and iPhone sales were go down significantly, which are still 60%. And they would loosen their standards around how protective of us they are for the sake of profitability. Can you guys still hear me? My internet is a little bit unstable. Great. Great.
Yes.
I wanted to show you a short video to describe how bad this issue actually is. And I think for most of us, it's like we've been using the internet for decades now, and it's just become part of our lives, and everything seems so normal. But I myself have been an addict to the internet starting about 20 years ago, and I'm going to describe that experience in a little bit more detail. But I wanted to share what it means for a young generation to grow up with these exploitative algorithms, these voodoo dolls that are running in the background of Facebook and YouTube, taking advantage of not what we necessarily want.
I think
not of what we necessarily want to click on, but what they force us in some way to click on. I think this video is really, really helpful to understand that.
I think it's a mixture of everything that's on social media that makes it so cool. Stories or Bitmojis or GIFs. Teens want to try out the new feature. They want to be on the cutting edge of the technology that's coming out. So on Snapchat, there's like the Snap shows, there's Snapchat streaks.
In the morning, just send a streaks picture. And when I get home from school, send a streaks picture. And now it's like a habit to do when I get on my phone.
When I post things on social media, there's definitely a period where I'm checking who saw it.
How many views you get, what people are liking on my stories and what I should keep posting.
There is a lot of pressure to present a version of yourself that's close to perfect.
I almost never post a picture that hasn't been like touched up in any way on Instagram. I always check it. If it's not getting as many likes as my other pictures, I might delete it. I have binge watched, I think, multiple shows. I've watched about 10 to 12 episodes in a day.
The 15 seconds between each episode definitely makes you feel like you have this urgent choice you have to make.
Instead of having to wait for an episode to come out every week, Netflix as a whole makes it a lot easier to just consume so much media all at once in a row.
I'm still trying to decide, but it starts playing an episode. I'm like, oh, it won't hurt. You find yourself like 2 hours later and you're still watching it and you have homework to get done.
I watch a lot of YouTube, probably more than Netflix, and the suggested videos help me like subscribe to new people.
I will watch videos for like an hour and a half without even having a plan to do that.
There's just so much content that's just addicting.
All right. This is a video that friends of mine at the Center for Humane Technology in San Francisco have put together. They work with policymakers and executives on exactly this issue. They're trying to change the issue basically top down by asking policymakers to change law around the internet and how we introduce internet to young generations, but also what responsibilities big tech companies have to not exploit our subconscious needs and desires and wants. So my friends Tristan and Asa, they are the executive directors of this center, and they're doing an amazing job for about a year now. They've launched this a year ago and have spoken to top executives so far, have been in front of Senate, and are really doing a great job making sure that we're all aware of what's going on here. I want to give you some more information on like how addictive the internet has become. One data point that I'm writing in my book about is the average media consumption, how it has changed over years. So as a US American in 2019, the average American has spent 11 hours and 30 minutes per day consuming media. And media is everything from radio, TV, to any screen that we're using in our lives. But it means that our screen time plus radio is 11 hours 30 on an average day for the average American. That is shocking to me. The numbers are also changing by country, and I've recently looked at a graphic that compares countries to each other, and it seems that developed countries, and this is a really new trend that I wasn't aware of until this year, it seems that developed countries actually have lower media consumption than less developed countries. So far, we've obviously seen internet usage in developed countries being higher, but now lower developed countries, meaning countries that also have people with, so there is a correlation between the development of the country and the consciousness level of people. People with lower consciousness levels are being taken advantage more by these exploitive algorithms, meaning developed countries now show significantly higher screen times than, undeveloped countries show higher screen times than developed countries, which has been a recent trend over the past year. Another statistic that I can give you is around searches for extreme points of view. We've all recently heard about flat earth theory, for example. There's a whole flat earth society whose members believe that the earth is actually flat rather than being round. And I know for most of us, this is something to like actually laugh about. I also thought it was a joke. But what the guys at the Center for Humane Technology did is, in 2017, they actually researched how easy would it be to get into flat earth theory. And they started by typing it into Google and seeing what the percentage of searches is that comes out positive, meaning positive towards this flat earth theory being correct. And in 2017, they saw about 20% of the searches being in favor of flat earth. Then they did the same thing on YouTube, where they searched for videos that are positively reflecting flat earth theory, and they found about 35% of those to be positive. And now they did the next thing. They activated that voodoo doll in the background. They activated the exploitative algorithms by clicking on one of those videos and watching it. And then they looked at all the suggestions, and they measured what is the percentage of suggestions that from here on is positively reflecting flat earth theory. And it was 9 out of 10 videos that were saying flat earth is correct. Here are reasons why. And so that means once we're opening the door to a new worldview, these algorithms are like kicking us down this wormhole really, really quickly. And it led to 2017, one of the most famous basketball players, Kyrie Irving, announcing over Twitter that he thinks flat earth theory is correct. So we have a person that is viewed by millions of people on a daily basis, confirming that. A week later, he comes out with a statement saying he was wrong. It was YouTube algorithms that kicked him down this wormhole. He saw a lot of videos that kind of confirmed that it could be true. And he apologized for it. But at that point, it was already too late. There were people commenting that the round earthers got him. And he was on the right side, but now he's just getting back because society and advertisers putting pressure on him. So the damage has already been done at this point. And unfortunately, the damage continues to be done because these algorithms want us to click on things. And the way we click on things is by presenting us really, really extreme information that we can't but click onto. I know this is a lot. It's been a lot for me to research this over the past 60 days, and it's been kind of depressing to see the data. I've seen that over the past 5 years, depression rates among young women, for example, have increased by 40%. At this point, we're checking our emails 74 times a day. And the saddest statistic that I came across is that Gen Z, this youngest generation, has an attention span of only 8 seconds. And we millennials were measured at 12 seconds compared to them. A goldfish has an attention span of 9 seconds. So our newest generation has a lower attention span than a goldfish, right? This is not all negative. I mean, this data sounds awful, and I understand that, but there are also some studies coming out recently that I found really deeply fascinating that actually have a positive twist on this. They're saying that Gen Z has a lower attention span, not because they're constantly being driven into different corners by algorithms, but rather because their judgment is now able to call out what the content of information is much more quickly than we are. Meaning, because they grew up on the internet, they actually see through advertisement more quickly, they see through content more quickly, and they're able to positive interpretation of saying, wow, you can't focus on anything. But I do think there is a positive aspect to it. Unfortunately, the truth is also that in order to target Gen Z, we no longer can give them long format videos. It has to be like really quick, really extreme for their attention to be captured.
That's probably why TikTok is so successful.
Correct. Yeah, I've joined TikTok a year ago, and while I don't consume it a lot right now, I think TikTok is this amazingly valuable resource because it not only combines what Gen Z wants in terms of length of content, but it also gives them actually valuable information. So for my TikTok is basically all either funny videos that are where I'm bursting out in laughter alone in my room, or they're videos that actually give me information about things. Like there are people who work at Sephora to tell me how to buy cosmetic products more cheaply. Or there are people who work at McDonald's who say like, hey, this is the secret formula. This is how you get an extra Big Mac. It's just like fun little tricks that are being shared on TikTok. And I find it a deeply fascinating platform. Let's see. Yeah, maybe just a few like ending statements, and then I would love to talk to you guys about this problem because it's been like kind of affecting my moods over the past 60 days as I was writing this book. I think the complexity that our youngest generation is going through right now is, on the one hand, the world is becoming increasingly more complex because we're producing information so much more quickly. There's so many content providers. There's so many apps out there right now, all starting to work together. We're constantly connected. The world is just increasing in its complexity constantly. At the same time, media has become like significantly more negative in its sentiment because it also requires to capture our attention, and the way to do that is to become more negative. So I have found research that shows over the past 10 years, every year, the sentiment has become more extreme in media to capture people's attention. We have exploitive algorithms that want us to spend as much time as possible on different platforms like YouTube, Facebook. Google is the same way with their searches, unfortunately, at this point. We have endless amounts of choice. Whatever you type in on Amazon, you will get 6,000 search results. It's completely overwhelming to make any decision that is based in rationality when overwhelmed by so many different choices. And the last point is the convenience of all of this has actually pushed us away from being a human who has 3 personalities, which is the past self, the current self, and the future self. We've become the current self all the time. And let me explain that a little bit more. Netflix, as you guys probably know, was a DVD delivery service in the beginning of its existence. If you go on DVD.com right now, you can still order Netflix DVDs. DVD.com is actually owned by Netflix. So Netflix used to deliver DVDs by mail within 2 to 4 days of delivery. And now it's an instant video streaming service. When looking at the same user, we found that the people were ordering different content when it was delivered to them in future, rather than when it's instantly given to them in the moment. So as an example, if I were to order for my future self, I would want to make sure that future self is learning something through that video. So I'm going to order a documentary, for example, or I'm just going to order a amazingly well done movie to fascinate myself by the production quality. But I'm not going to watch a trashy dating show, right? I'm not going to watch the stupid stuff that just gets me addicted. But when I'm ordering something to watch right now, when I'm feeling tired and exhausted from social content, I just want to watch something stupid when my brain shuts off. And so Netflix was a service that was serving future me and allowing my future self to become a better version with better knowledge, to serving my current needs, which is clicking on things that I kind of want to see, but rather have to see because my current state of mind is deflated. And that convenience across the tech industry, where we're only focused on this like current need that we have in this very specific moment, is actually exploiting us to take less care about our future versions. And I think what's happening around depression rates is not that people are getting hooked to the internet and they're hating it. I think part of the depression rates increase that we've seen over the past decade has to do with us being unable to become the versions of ourselves that we were hoping to be, because we're stuck in the current moment, being exploited by the conveniences provided by tech companies. That's all I had.
Damn. So much information. Chris Anderson at the beginning of TED always says, by the end of the week, your brain will explode, but you will love it. Sometimes I feel during this session, I have little explosions in the middle already.
Yeah, it's a crazy topic.
Yeah, sorry, I got a question. So I'm very into this topic actually, because my background is, I'm a journalist by background. So I have been very intrigued since around 2017, 2018 about what privacy and what is happening. And therefore, what do you, so you mentioned some things that have been happening, like Cambridge Analytics, you know, like all this fake news thing and everything. What do you believe after your 60 days of search, you know, and being there, would be like the next big thing in terms of privacy? Like, do you think that we will continue to have a bunch of fake news? Do you think this could maybe decrease because now we have more awareness and like citizens actually know at least about it? Or this is just like a group of people that know about this information, which is like techie people or more journalists and others, but the majority of people are not aware about the situation. Yeah. What is your perception?
Well, I think at this stage tech is used to downgrade human capabilities right now. And that's our biggest problem. Okay. It's not that it's growing so fast that we can't grow with it. It's growing fast and downgrading us. So its curve is up, our curve is actually down, right? And that is the major problem that I see. I think the downgrading is going to continue. And I'm very hopeful that the guys at the Center of Humane Technology are going to be able to have politicians bring out laws that require tech companies, for example, to follow certain practices within of how they create algorithms. That would be incredible. What I'm trying to do with this book, my book is called Lit, by the way, L-I-T. I'm trying to bottom up create an understanding with Gen Z of what is being done to them. Because I think obviously top down would be amazing. If this works out, we could make a lot of change instantly. But I think what you mentioned is the bigger part, which is the awareness of each individual, what's going on. I think self-critical or critical self-judgment is the thing that will define whether we can distinguish fake information from real information. And this is only going to get better. We're at the start of creating fake videos. I don't think we're far away from seeing a lot of fake videos being distributed, looking like, you know, Trump says one thing, but he never said it. Obama says one thing, but that actually never happened. I think it's only going to get worse, honestly. I don't think this is, on a global basis, this is only going to get worse, and it will allow, I think, it will allow governments and companies to take more control of their people because they can control the information flow. I also think a major shift in society that will happen is right now we're judging each other by income levels, right? Lower class, middle class, upper class. I actually think that distinction will become less relevant in the future. I think the big distinction will become content producer versus content consumer. There will be people who will take in some information and then produce their own content and put it out there. And then there will be people who will be stuck in the loops created by society, constantly just consuming information and shutting their brain off more and more and more. I'm experiencing this distinction already in San Francisco, where I'm surrounded by a lot of content creators. But as soon as I leave here, there is a lot of consumption that's going on where I'm kind of shocked how much time people spend listening to other people's thoughts instead of making up their own mind. So I have a very critical perspective on the future. I think awareness is the only thing that can get us out of it. And the more people help us, I'm a big supporter, for example, of the whole psychedelic movement that is happening. I think it's opening doors for people to see the world from a different perspective. Anybody who's critical to tech has a fair point of view. So anything that raises our conscience globally, I think will be really, really helpful in seeing this.
I knew yes to drugs. There are any forms of drugs.
I mean, studies are fascinating, right? MDMA studies are really, really fascinating. Psilocybin studies are incredible in terms of depression results. So I think there's a lot of potential in this to open our eyes and ears to seeing the world as it is.
The new supplement.
During your 60 days and searching the internet for studies and data, how do you have dealt with the fact that you find a study, you find an article, you find data, and the next click on the Google list is not probably telling the opposite, but a different story compared to the other article. So how, let's say, do you create the, I don't know, seriousness of an article or the trustworthiness of an article?
Oh, totally. I think that's a great question. A couple of thoughts. First of all, when I research Google, I try to find papers, mostly scientific papers. So the way to do that is actually my way of doing it. There are 100 ways of doing this, but in Google, you can type in the word file type, and then after that you write PDF. So then it's only searches for PDFs rather than general news articles and websites. So you can limit your Google search to PDFs only, which then results in a lot of scientific papers that are being returned in my search. So that helps me kind of verify the truthfulness of information. But you're completely right. Every time I search for information on, how much time do people spend in front of their computers, I get information from like 3 hours on average to 11.5 hours on average. The information that I use, the information that I use right now is based on Nielsen, which is a huge marketing research company, and they've been publishing this for a decade now. So I have some trust in at least the consistency of the process that they're using. And they're focused on media consumption rather than saying screen time or internet time. They're just interested in how much information do we get from different resources throughout our day. And I think 11 hours 30 is a little bit overstating things because they're probably underestimating how many devices we use simultaneously to be on the internet with. But it does tell us that we're spending close to half of our days and 2/3 of our awakened times consuming information or being in front of screens, which that is more than I will be ever spending with any other person on this planet or doing any other thing on this planet. More than sleep. This is probably the first time in our lifetimes that we do something more than sleep, right? So it's hard to figure out if something is truly correct. I try to do it by researching papers mostly. And also because I'm writing a book, quite frankly, there is something about storylining in here. So there is probably something around a positive confirmation bias that I as well as others are going through. No question about it.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
So one of my favorite writers is Neil Stevenson. He's a science fiction writer. Maybe some of you know him. And I've seen a couple of his talks, and he said, and his job is sort of to, give possibilities of the future. Some of them are right, some of them aren't. He said one thing that sort of like hit him, and he didn't see it coming, was this, the election in 2016, and what people are complaining about is like the rule of law, or things like that. But like the deeper thing is, we're losing this like shared agreement on what is factual reality, and there are state actors who are actively trying to subvert that as well, and this is super dangerous. And just all the lies, and I don't know how anyone come up with a way to remedy that, or to legislate around it, or anything. This is the part where I find super kind of depressing and really alarming.
Yeah, I mean, it is the most alarming thing we as a society have ever gone through, because it reminds me too much of other majorly developed civilizations failing. Meaning, right now what we're actually getting is bread and games. Right? It's the classic Roman way of cultivating the society, by just giving them something else to deal with rather than actually think about the major issues and understand what truth is. So we're getting a lot of bread and games right now. Netflix, all about bread and games. YouTube, all about bread and games. It's all about confusing us. I watched a recent video actually of flat earthers discussing round earth theory with scientists. And those videos are always unfortunate, because flat earthers are in the strong belief that if you research the internet enough, you will come across the truth, which confirms their theory. And scientists have a very different approach of getting to truth, which is they're trying to actually actively measure things in the real world and create theories that then have to be confirmed around the globe. It's a very different approach to getting to truth. Both of them are
flat earthers. They are real.
Oh yeah, they're real. These people are real. I think personally that they're real because we are so emphasizing our view on the world through our eyes. Anything that we can't see is hard to accept for a lot of people. So moon landing is obviously fake because we weren't able to see it. Round Earth is fake because I can see pretty far into the distance, and after that it's just foggy. So it's probably just fog that is limiting me from seeing Europe from here. So these people are real, but their basis of studying things is watching videos and researching the internet, not actually doing the scientific process to get it to information. So I don't think there's a way to actually make this happen. I think one of my friends actually writes a lot about civilizational collapse, and he is like deeply afraid that this drift of truth, this like post-truth era that we're in right now, is what will either make us end up in a huge war, or not understand that we have to vaccine our kids against a new virus that comes up. Whatever that disinformation is, he's afraid that yeah, I wish I had better news.
Thank you.
Well, I have a question. You mentioned the nice voodoo man in the back, and on the other hand, you say, of course, you know more than yourself about yourself, but they have a prediction of a good way for you. So, and then you are depressed because you are not going this way actually. So, but who defines this way then?
Yeah. So when I say people get depressed because they're not becoming their future selves, I mean, for example, I have the goal of learning how to program. And I'm delaying this goal every year because I'm so focused on watching YouTube videos and being on Facebook that I don't reach my own goals. And then 10 years later, I look back and I'm like, wow, I haven't actually achieved anything. I'm not the person that I wanted to be. This is awful. And as you know, happiness is kind of the discrepancy between expectation and reality. Like, I'm very unhappy if my reality is not what I expected. So I think there's a lot of depression that comes from technology forcing us to spend so much time on our current needs rather than fulfilling our desires that actually create fulfillment and happiness long term. But the voodoo doll, that's actually the interesting question here is, who does define what a good algorithm is? And right now it's these individual companies. As profit-seeking companies, their desire is to have us on the platform for as long as humanly possible. As the Netflix CEO once said, they're competing with sleep, right? And that's really sad, because sleep is kind of the last frontier that we dedicate 7 hours to, and that's okay. No longer, it is no longer this unique thing that all of us do. Some kids have actually real sleep issues because of tech addiction. But right now it is tech companies defining what a good algorithm is. So the voodoo doll right now is only trying to figure out how can I present content to you that will, with the highest likelihood, keep you on the platform for a bit longer. That's why our Facebook feeds are not chronologically ordered. They're ordered by things that this voodoo doll thinks we want to see and engage with the most. They could do this very differently. They could do it by chronological order. They could do this by closeness to friends that we have and present us that information. But the information that we're actually getting is whatever keeps us on Facebook the longest.
And we've learned yesterday in the morning session from the Kai that the algorithm is not looking for content we resonate with. The algorithm is looking for profit. So everything that can be translated to profit is the content you're delivered to, not what you'd like or what you share, what you comment, or what you make your own content. It's all about how can you grow profit through the organization. As Sini said before, you are, for Facebook, you are the product.
Yeah.
Sini, thank you so much for this. Cool. I feel like it's we had 2 very intense sessions with a lot of information to process and digest.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, this has been always fun for me. This is also a way of like testing these ideas. Last time I also got some incredible questions back from the participants, which was really helpful in like developing the book. And right now I'm in the second stage where I'm searching for an editor right now who can work through the book with me. English is not my first language. I also don't write like an amazing author, so I need some help on that side as well. And any feedback that you guys have on these concepts or any recommendations on books to read is super highly appreciated.
Sini, have a great day ahead.
Cool.
All of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for standing, and thank you for holding tight. Thank you for being there. 8 in the evening. We'll all see each other tomorrow at 5:30 again in the afternoon for the next 2 sessions.
Okay. Bye. Have a nice evening.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye. Bye.